Welcome to the Caribbean Parenting Digital Show. This talk show is presented each week by host Alina Lewis and features guests from our Caribbean islands right here on this channel. As we discuss family finances, proverbial principles, child guidance, and academics at home, guests join in weekly to have conversations that give helpful tips about how to be a better parent. Like, subscribe, follow, and share as you tune in each week for new episodes of the Caribbean Parenting Digital Show.
Good day and welcome to the Caribbean Parenting Digital Show. Through this platform, we have conversations that give helpful tips about how to be a better parent each day. Now, UNESCO Communications encourages us to observe International Literacy Day 2020 with a focus on literacy, teaching and learning in the COVID-19 crisis and beyond, with a focus on the role of educators and changing dimensions. Now, this team highlights literacy learning in a lifelong learning perspective and therefore mainly focuses on youth and adults. The recent COVID-19 crisis has been a stark reminder of the existing gap between policy discourse and reality, a gap that already existed in the pre-COVID-19 era and is negatively affecting the learning of youth and adults who have no or low literacy skills of youth and therefore tend to face multiple disadvantages. Today's discussion is meant to help us to understand the possibilities that exist to improve literacy levels in Trinidad and Tobago.
My name is Stefan Dabo. ALTA gives me the environment to learn and try harder with the teachers that gives me confidence, so I'm not afraid of making a mistake, which helps me to learn and grow. I am ALTA.
Sign up now for ALTA in your home, on your computer or smartphone. Call 624-2582.
And of course, joining us now is ALTA representative Paula Lucy Smith. Now, Miss Lucy Smith is the founder and CEO of the Adult Literacy Tutors Association, ALTA, which is an organization identified an enormous, unacknowledged social need of low levels of adult literacy in Trinidad and Tobago, and has actually taken significant steps to deal with it. Now, Paula, a national scholarship winner from St. Joseph's Convent in Port of Spain, attended Warwick University and the University of Leicester in England, where she took a first degree in history and a postgraduate certificate in education. She started her career as a secondary school teacher at the St. Augustine Senior Comprehensive from 1983 to 1987. And in 1990, she began teaching an adult literacy class of about 20 people on a volunteer basis. And in 1992, formed ALTA to offer free literacy classes to adults and also to train volunteer literacy tutors. Now, Paula, thank you for taking time to join us this afternoon.
Sure, Pamela. Nice to be here.
It's
nice
wonderful
to be invited.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you with us. And as we begin our conversation this afternoon, of course, we know it's observance of International Literacy Day. And looking at literacy in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, can you tell us a little bit about literacy levels in Trinidad and Tobago as we start off our discussions?
So literacy levels are always hard to determine because very few countries actually do national literacy surveys. And that's really the only way you will get accurate literacy statistics, where you actually ask persons in a random sample survey to demonstrate their literacy competence. Because if you ask people, generally they'll say, yes, they can read and write. So it's not something people like to say they don't know how to do. So we have very little statistical data to go on for Trinidad. What we do have is 2 national literacy surveys that were done in the 90s, and that's about as close to now as we have statistics that are accurate. And those 2 surveys, the first one was done by ALTA in 1994, and then the second by UWI, by ISAT UWI, the following year in 1995. And what was interesting is those statistics pretty much came up with the same, 2 different surveys, 2 different sample populations, came up with much the same information, looking at about 1 in 4 of the adult population, those 15 and over, who struggle with everyday reading and writing. So that is things like filling out a form beyond your name. So they might be able to write their name and little else. Also looking at, can you do your grocery shopping? Can you read the list of contents on that? So can you read a street sign to know where you're going, a sign on a building, something as basic as push, pull on a door, open, closed on a door. Those kinds of things will be challenges for 1 out of 4 persons in Trinidad and Tobago. And then at a higher level, the UWI survey looked at, if you have something looking like, say, a newspaper article, then your level of literacy drops down to just 45% of the population over age 15 that can read and understand at a newspaper, a basic newspaper level, not your complicated types of articles, basic information articles. So that's the statistical picture, because we have huge amount of just experience of teachers saying that children are struggling with reading in our school system, and people in the workforce. In employment, we will get calls from employers, from different types of agencies saying that they have noticed that some of their members have low literacy and try to refer them to us. So, there's a huge amount of experience and empirical evidence out there that it is current. And you can look at SEA results and things like that to get predictions of what's going to happen,
All right. And Paula, you actually touched there on 1 in 4 you mentioned a short while ago with regards to the literacy issues, if I should use that word, in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, and you also gave an explanation of the need for literacy. And let us now look at the importance of literacy skills development, because this, of course, is something that you would deal with when it comes to ALTA and the organization, the importance of literacy skills development.
So literacy skills, it's a group of skills to start off with, and you can broadly divide them into reading and writing skills, with spelling being a major subset of the writing area. In there now, you have a range of ability. So you can look at literacy skills as something that never stops developing throughout your entire life. You will constantly, if you read broadly, you will come across words you've never seen before, and you have to apply those literacy skills, and you will expand. The more you read is the better you are able to read. But before you can read to improve your reading, you have to have the basic skills that comprise the ability to read. And we think about what is reading. So when I'm speaking here now, you don't see the words that I'm saying. They're heard. And what happens is you take something that is only spoken, only heard, and you make that so that people can see it. And that's what reading and writing are about, taking something that is purely auditory and making it visual. And how do you do that? You put the sounds, the 44 sounds that make up spoken English, you put them into code. And that code are the letters of the alphabet. That's what the letters of the alphabet are. They are a phonic code. Letters represent sounds. But what makes reading in English very complex is it's not a one-to-one ratio, a relationship at all times. You can have one sound, like the sound A, that has 8 different ways to spell it or represent it. So that makes reading in English quite complex. And then writing is the reverse of reading, where you hear the words and you've got to figure out what letters to put down. So that's the literacy skill, what you're starting off with, what makes up the skill of reading and writing. And that's what literacy is. And it It goes from a range of at a very basic level up to highly complex skills. And with it always is embedded that reading is getting a message from text. Writing is putting your message in text, in print, right? And those two, the messages are the key thing to be able to get the message from the reading or put the message into the writing. And therefore, it is got thinking skills in it. And you've got always to be aware that it's about getting messages, getting meaning from text. So it is a skill, but it's a skill in order to get a message or send a message.
I want to thank you so much for that, Paula, because some of
Yeah.
what you have said there, even I am learning for the first time. And while you're talking as well, I am thinking about it in the concept of the school system, of the learning system, because the things that you have revealed there, the things that you have mentioned, it is not what they necessarily teach at the preschool level. You know, of course, that's where you would start off with literacy and so on, but it's not something that they really go deep into teaching children. And that's why you find that there are many times that children, they're moving up from kindergarten to primary school level, and the literacy level is not where it should be. I mean, what are your thoughts on that particular area there?
Yeah. So with literacy, there is sometimes an assumption that everyone can pick it up. Now, there are children who have a natural aptitude for reading and writing, and they seem almost to learn from just exposure without any explicit teaching. And that can sometimes fool us into thinking that it's something that people just can, you read to them, you expose them, and they'll just acquire the skill. But literacy for a few people is like that. And those are the ones who have really come with this natural ability, the same way that you might have somebody that from a very young age can carry a tune. And you say, wow, nobody taught her that, but she just picked it up, right? And then other people will never carry a tune for the rest of their lives, right? So everybody comes with these different set of aptitudes and skills. And what might be happening in our school is we're building it for the persons who have a high level of aptitude, and they will succeed in the school system, and they will pick up literacy because they have this natural aptitude for it. But where we have a fall down in our system is those children who do not come with a natural aptitude and who need very explicit teaching. And much of the research now is showing that what you need is to really show and teach very explicitly the code that transfers spoken to written language, to teach phonics and to teach the relationship between letters and sounds. But even before you reach to letters, you've got to be able to understand and to realize that words are made up of sounds. So what the preschools are doing and what they should be doing, and I'm sure a lot of them are doing it, is working very systematically with the sounds that make up spoken language. So they work with rhyming games and all the different ways in which you take off a sound and you add a sound. So all this area that is now called phonological awareness, where you do the preparatory work for when you come to the point where you need to link a letter and a sound, because before you can link a letter to a sound, you've got to be able to distinguish that sound within the whole word. So if you say cat, can you hear an ah inside of cat? It's easier to hear the k at the start and the t at the end. So it's something that incrementally you work with sounds within language and then get to the point of linking them to the letters. And sometimes that foundational work is not done, and we jump into the letters and start linking letters to sounds when people are just not hearing these sounds. What are these sounds? They're hearing words because that's what carries meaning. So sometimes that's where there is a missing link, shall we say.
All right. And, and even as we continue to speak about the school system, now you said sometimes they jump from that foundation area and they move to another level without actually ensuring that that foundation is laid. And knowing that you have, of course, being your background, being in the organization, adult literacy, do you sometimes consider what could be done or what could be implemented within even the school system to improve on that foundation, to ensure that it is set so that these children, even those that are at a low aptitude, that they can reach up to those that have the aptitude for literacy?
So what you'll find is that those who have the natural aptitude, you don't have to do as much teaching with them, right? Whereas those who have the lower aptitude, you'll have to do a lot more explicit teaching. So that's where, if you can get a system that really works well in teaching the connection between letters and sounds, and get your teachers trained in that system and stick with it, so that so there tends to be a lot of changing of policy and changing of programs. And if we can get that so that it's systematically taught, the phonic code that is the basis of written language, and then train our teachers in how to teach that phonic code, then you're going to have a better chance of success for everybody. So at ALTA, we tend to really have a lot of phonics embedded in our program, but not just phonics. There's more to it than that, but there is a heavy component of phonics. So I think that will be something that can certainly help in the school system, really get a program, get teachers versed in that program, and getting them, putting a priority on getting the reading and writing skills in early on. Sometimes we have a very wide range of competencies that we're trying to get children to do at a very young age, perhaps propelled by what are the requirements for the SEA. And we generally in our education system are asking children to do things at an age where it is a stretch already for those even who are have the natural aptitude. And let me mention here that one of the other key factors in the acquisition of literacy, we've been talking about school, but of course home is a critical factor. So when a teacher meets a child will have all different levels of exposure before they even meet the school system. And that has a huge impact on their ability to take in what is being taught. So you'll find that literacy is never just a product of school, but it is a product of home and school. And this is why this channel that you have here, with parenting being the focus, is an excellent idea.
Yes, indeed. And that is, of course, the intention, to be an information platform to help parents and even others, in terms of dealing with children and all these different areas that affect us on a daily basis. And you did mention even before the child comes into the school system. And our next topic, actually, we were going to talk about the impact of sound literacy skills on everyday living. Of course, you already would have mentioned, that children come from different backgrounds and things like that. Now, what are your thoughts on this particular topic of the impact that sound literacy skills has on everyday living?
Okay, so if you're thinking about how does having or not having literacy impact your daily life, clearly without literacy skills in the Trinidad and Tobago that we live in now, your life is much more difficult, and it will also be more difficult for your children as well, because you are not able to access all of the services and all of the opportunities that are possible, because your literacy will be a limiting factor. And you see it particularly now with COVID. Government had a number of initiatives to access grants, and all of these grants required quite complex form filling. And also quite a few of them were online grants. So you had to navigate that online world as well. And that presents a number of closed gates for persons who are trying to access them if they're not got that level of literacy. So you saw that happening here. You see a lot of information being put out in a national health crisis like this, being put out as written language, as written print, whether it is on TV ads, it's still, although you've got some spoken stuff, there's a lot of things out there that are written. So sometimes you are going to miss out on that. The basic access to jobs is often determined by your level of literacy, because again, the gate that you have to go through in order to get a job, first point is the written application form. So there are all these things that deny you access if you are not literate enough to be able to follow through to the next step. And then you have that other aspect of daily life, your health, your spirituality, all of those things you think about. You are maybe you're a diabetic, you have suffering from sugar, and you need to look on every single grocery item you buy, and you need to look for that word SUGAR and all its different ways in which it is masked in products to know if you are eating something that is healthy for you. Right. So there are ways in which, there's subtle ways in which you are disadvantaged if you are not able to read the world around you, because so much is now embedded in print.
All right. And even before we continue at this juncture, we just want to take a pause for a word from our sponsor, SRC Private Primary.
Hi, this is Albert Munasar, parent of Sarah Munasar. SRC has been good for us in the sense that she has come a long way because of the personalized attention that they were able to give to us. She has been able to get the attention that she needs to be able to catch up. Sarah initially was a bit behind, and now we think she is well on her way to being able to be a functional student at her level and even be able to surpass what she needs to be because of the attention that she was able to get at SRC. Thank you very much for the time, and thank you for giving the dedication that she needs to become a better student.
All right, and I say welcome again to Paula. And remember, we are on the Caribbean Digital Parenting Show as we continue our discussion on International Literacy Day. And there are many things that we would have discussed already, and many things that you have really opened up our minds to consider when it comes to literacy. And it is so much more than just being able to read and write, because I believe that is what people generally think literacy is, just being able to read and write. But as you would have explained it there, it is so much more. Now, at this point, we want to look at some of the avenues that are available, Paula, with regards to improving literacy levels. Of course, we know ALTA is one. So first of all, you're going to tell us a little bit about ALTA, and we would have read about ALTA in the beginning, giving the description and so on. But in addition to ALTA, some other avenues that are available to, of course, improve literacy levels.
So I think one of the, as we are on a parenting show here, talking maybe primarily to parents, one of the things that sometimes is overlooked is that the literacy level of a parent can have a very large effect upon the literacy level of a child. So often parents go around seeking help for their children when what maybe they should be doing is seeking to improve their own literacy. And by improving their own literacy, they will almost automatically improve the literacy of their child, because they will now start reading to their child, so again, we come back to what I said about home and school, and that the school can't produce literacy on its own, or it would be much more difficult to do so without some sort of home impact on literacy, some home reading, some home writing, but reading primarily. So one of the factors that I always consider really important for adults when they're thinking about what can I do for my child to ensure they have a better future, and in particular parents who want them to have a better future than their own present, is to look and consider, if I upgrade my literacy skills, then I am helping my child in the future because I can engage much more fully with my child's education and give them that background that the school is relying upon in order to develop the literacy skills. So you find that many of our students in the past, it at first mainly female, but increasingly male, come and say what is driving them to improve their own literacy is that they find their children are coming home from school and asking for help, and they cannot give them the help. I remember one father saying the child came and said, "How you spell November?" And he said, "Call your mother." Right? And the child said to him, "But just tell me why I have to call my mother." Right? So you find that it puts a strain also on the parent-child relationship if the child is seeking help and the parent is not able to help them. And sometimes this ends up being a kind of gruff attitude on the parent's part. So I think that's an important thing to note, that improving your own literacy does really have an impact upon your child's literacy. And when adults come to ALTA, you find that their self-perception also changes, and they are able to look at things in a much more confident way. And sometimes, we've had instances where parents start to share what they are doing at ALTA with their children who are in a preschool stage, and they are sharing what they've been learning and learning from each other in these two different educational institutions. But I know I will talk a little bit about a new initiative that we have, which is the ALTA V, the ALTA Virtual. So I don't know if we want to go there yet now, Pamela, or if we... I can give specifics on programs, yes.
Sure, yeah, we'll go there shortly. But before we
Right.
do, and you did mention with the adults and so on coming in, and I've heard people say this. I've heard people say that, and of course these people are adults now, and they would
Yes.
tell me that when they were much younger, they would sit with their parents to do homework, and their parents would take their book and they would go through it. They would tell them, "You sure that's correct? You need to do that over. You need to check that over," only to grow older and realize that their parent, whether it's the mother or the father,
Yeah.
they were unable to read or write. And,
Yes.
that is something that really it happens. And even
Yes, it
today,
does.
it
It
seems
does.
to happen. And I mean, would you have heard any sort of stories in terms of that very situation?
Certainly that happens because generally parents want to look good in their children's eyes. So sometimes it is, I don't know. I mean, parents must be really good to pull this off. I'm really impressed with it because, and I always say that when you are not a reader, you become extremely resourceful and inventive, and you learn to work around it. Now, it takes a lot more time and a lot more effort than if you can simply read it, right? So, those parents who are able to pull off that, I don't even know what to call it. It's a wonderful way that you can get your children to perform with them never even knowing that you are not able to do what it is you are expecting them to do. So, but certainly that is definitely something that seems that some parents could real pull off. Not everybody could
Yes.
do it, I don't think, right? But there is still that little factor in there that says if you could, as a parent, have actually read the student's piece of work, might you have been able to do more? Right. But certainly that discipline of having people sit down and spend the time and self check, because that's really important to be able to sit down, look at your work and go it over. And often you will find your own errors. And the parent
That's
just
right.
saying, look at it again, is a wonderful strategy. So it's definitely a place to start if you are a parent and you have weak literacy skills. Don't let it stop you from engaging with the child's homework and engaging with everything they do in school. And don't ever feel that you can't go into that school because the teacher might find out you have some weak literacy skills. Teachers are well aware that there are a whole range of people with literacy skills that are not as they should be. And more than anybody else, teachers know the acquisition of literacy is difficult. It's fraught with problems, so they will understand. So never, never feel that you need to disengage because you yourself had bad school experiences or the teacher might say something to you. The teachers will be supportive.
Right. And, I totally understand that. As you said, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. Of course,
Yeah.
maybe the opportunities that are available now may not have even been available when these
Yeah.
people were younger, So, but before we go into talking about ALTA and their new programs, we're just jumping into our question and answer segment. We would have had a
Great.
question sent in from a viewer and just wanting to know, and I'm just reading what they would have messaged. So basically, literacy skills is an essential to life. The question is, how can a parent who is facing challenges with literacy skills, and we just touched on that,
Yeah.
how can a parent who is facing challenges with literacy skills able to assist a child at home during the new norm of learning during this pandemic? What is your answer to that, Paula?
So there's not too much that has changed in education apart from the delivery of it, right? So if the challenge is actually being able to navigate to get to the platforms that are offering instruction, so whether it is Zoom classes or whichever one of those different mediums. Now, what I've found interesting is that persons can have quite low literacy skills but still be able to navigate a smartphone or two, right? Um, be able to get onto YouTube and have their whole playlist going on, right? Use Zoom and other types of interaction. Be proficient on WhatsApp. So this ability to read, sometimes adults who don't have those reading skills, they've become very good at using whatever pictures and other cues are around to figure things out. And you find that the internet, although there's a lot of text, that there is quite a lot of picture representation for things when you think about it, right? Once you know what the YouTube icon looks like and you've gone to it once, maybe with somebody's help, the next time you go in, it's going to sit there on your screen, right? Because you've been there already. So I think if that is the barrier for you with children's learning, getting onto the sites, it's just to use whatever you can to experiment and play around with it until you get onto the sites. More challenging is if you are actually expected to do activities with children, right? So some of the online learning may require you as the parent to print out worksheets or some sorts of activity sheets for children and go through those activity sheets with them. Now that is where you're going to get much more of a challenge. And there's very little that you can do if you can't read what that worksheet says. There's very little that you can do to make sure that you are accurately representing that for your child. And this is going to be a barrier. The only other option is to try and find somebody who you can pool with. So have your child, a neighbor or family member, a group there, once that within the health concerns restrictions, right? But it is one of the startling things that COVID has thrown up, of course, that you now have the parents having to act more like teachers depending on the school setup that they have. And of course, there are a whole group, this is for the group of children who have devices and have internet. But there's a whole group of children who don't have any access to any of those services, so are now just without any school input until schools resume. And for those children, parents can do a tremendous amount, right? So if you are a parent who does not, and there may not be many on this forum because you're an internet forum, but you may know people. If you don't have access to the internet and therefore you can't access school, just engage in life with your child. A parent, whether they are literate or not, has a huge wealth of experience and learning from their lifetime. They have skills that they can pass on. And so much of it now we think that there is that schools own learning, but learning can take place in any environment. So if whatever you cook, engage your children with that. Get them to be part of what's happening in the home and just talk. And if there's a family member, who's in their 80s and they generally are just there, and we tend to forget about the elderly. Life is zooming around them. Now is your opportunity to sit down and say to your child, look, find out about your uncle, your grandfather, and just conversation and talk, and what life was like. And you'll find that will enrich. And literacy is reading and writing, the skill, but the feeder into that is vocabulary. And if you can get the older generation engaged, so you use this period. If you don't have the internet and you can't access all these structured learning activities, go back to what was learning of old, where you learned everything about life in the home, and you use conversation and everyday activities. And you, as the parent, make every daily life activity into something that engages your child, your children, and gets them thinking, because the primary focus of education is to develop the thinking process. And you can do that without worksheets. You don't have to have worksheets. You can do that.
Right. And, I indeed love what you said there, speaking to the older heads, whether it's a family or a friend or so, and, and getting into those conversations and learning about life, so it's more than just pen and paper. And of course, Paula, we have another question. And this parent wants to know, how can a parent know whether their own literacy levels are sufficiently developed?
So usually you can tell if your literacy levels are not what they should be, because you constantly are confused by whatever print you are trying to read, right? You're not getting the messages. When you read something, you are, I don't really know what this is saying, because very often it's not that you haven't got great thought processes. It's because you're not sure about a number of words there and you're guessing. So you're putting in words that you think might fit there, but you're not quite sure. So if you've made 5, 10, 15 wrong guesses, by the time you reach the end of what you're reading, you would be confused, right? So that's one of the aspects. If you are reading and you're stumbling on words, you're not sure what words are. Okay. Now, I try to differentiate always between language and literacy. So we're not here talking about whether you are a master of standard English grammar, right? So that's a different level of literacy. Okay. So sometimes when people feel they have weak literacy skills, what they're really talking about is that they haven't mastered standard English. So they use primarily Creole. So they might say something like he have, right? Which is a Creole construction, Creole language, instead of he has. Okay. And that is not going to stop you from understanding what you read, right? That may have an impact when you're trying to teach grammar, standard English grammar, to your child in this COVID period where you don't have a teacher to do so. So I would say if your standard English language skills and grammar skills are weak, then it's probably not a good idea to try and teach standard English, to take on that task instead of the school. I would say leave that for the school, right? And you work instead on the vocabulary enrichment and on giving people these whole life experiences that are now going to be something that they can feed into, at SEA, you have to write essays, and those essays need content. And if your world experience is very narrow, what are you going to write about? So use this as that enrichment period. So I think if you have weak literacy skills, generally, because it actually impacts your ability to function in everyday life. But
All
if you're
right.
unsure, I think you may be more dealing with grammar issues than the basic literacy levels.
All right, and at this point, we just want to pause as we hear from the Adult Literacy Tutors Association.
My name is Stefan Dabo. ALTA gives me the environment to learn and try harder with the teachers that gives me confidence so I'm not afraid of making a mistake, which helps me to learn and grow. I am ALTA.
Sign up now for ALTA in your home, on your computer or smartphone. Call 624-2582.
All right, so we just want to say again, thank you. We are almost to the end of our program today, talking about International Literacy Day, and it is so very important that we understand. And I'm so grateful that Paula could join us today to really discuss literacy. And again, it's more than just being able to read and write. There is so much more. I want to ask you, Paula, as we spotlight, how does ALTA support literacy development among adults? And I know that you also have some new initiatives. I would love to hear a little more about what is available and what you have coming on stream.
Yeah. So ALTA, since 1992, we've been offering free literacy instruction for anyone over the age of 16 who would like to improve their reading, writing, spelling skills. We've had community classes, usually about 50 venues every year. And at this time, we open those class venues to new students. Obviously, this year, because of COVID, it's not venue based. We no longer can offer instruction in schools, community centers, churches, as we've done for 27 years. So we've gone to a new initiative, a new idea, and this is ALTA V, which is ALTA Virtual. So we are using the online learning platform Zoom. And we chose that one because a lot of people have been using that, so they are quite familiar with it, and it's a very easy to use platform. And at the moment, we're training our tutors who've decided to embark on this new ALTA V journey with us. We're training them how to adapt the teaching methods that we use in the classrooms, how to use that now with an on-screen interaction with students. So we're calling for adults age 16 and had struggles with reading, writing, spelling, and you have the time, 2 hours twice a week you have to put aside. You have that time where you can put aside to address your own literacy needs. You can give us a call. You can call us at 624-2582, or you can call at 341-8668. So that's 341 and 8668, so much like our country code, but got a 66 in the middle. So you can call us and we will ask you what device you have, whether it's a smartphone or a laptop or a tablet. So that's important information for us to get. Obviously, to access virtual classes, you must have a device and you must have an internet that is fairly reliable. So those are the two restricting factors. In the past, it was you had to get to a venue. Here, you just have to have your device and you have to have the same 2 hours twice a week that we've always had at ALTA that you put aside for your literacy learning. And we do have two options for learners. One is the Zoom, and then we have a pilot project for our software, which is ALTA Online. And that's a software project we've been working on for over 5 years. And NGC has stepped up and sponsored a pilot so we can accommodate about 150 students coming in to start at level 1. And we would start those who have computers then can go onto an online platform and basically learn independently without a teacher. So we have two options, one where you learn with a teacher in the Zoom model. And then if you have a computer and you have been assessed to be level 1, then because we don't have level 2 ready, level 1, then you can go into the ALTA online software and use that. So we are ready for the virtual experience at ALTA. We're going to be starting the actual instruction in both of these, ALTA Online and ALTA V. We're going to start that in October. So really, we're looking for students to sign up with us throughout September. And we have time slots and days. So once you come in and you select the days and times that work for you, you must select twice a week. So that's 2 days with the same time. Then we will connect you with a tutor and you will then have your class, and we probably would look at 6 to 8 students. That's our usual ratio, so that you will get a lot of individual attention with that tutor. So that's how we're planning things to try and meet this need, and for the first time be able to actually take ALTA into people's homes through this virtual mode. And because children are having to use and acquire devices and internet in order to access school, you may find a lot more parents are now having access to devices maybe in the afternoon when the children are not. So they've got a new device, and if your child is going to use it to improve their own literacy and improve their education, now is the ideal opportunity for you also to do that. So you make this tool that you've acquired really work for your child, but work for you as well. And if you can be learning at the same time as they are, it makes a tremendous difference to children if they can get that interaction with parents. And you may think the child would be somehow uneasy with a parent learning, but most of the time when all the stories that our students have said is when they say to their children, I'm going to ALTA, the children tell them, well, great, that's wonderful, right? Because sometimes you think your children don't know your inadequacies, but often they know, but they're just don't want to let you know that they know, right? So if you actually start doing something about your own literacy, you often will find you grow in the eyes of your child rather than get diminished. Many people think that they will be diminished in their children's eyes, and it's really the opposite. All the students say it's the opposite.
That's right. And as you said, getting into that world, this virtual world that we are in, and with coronavirus and everything that's happening around the world, basically organizations like ALTA and all like educational systems and so on being, some of them forced online, but again, as you mentioned, ALTA being taken into the home now. So it's not just out of home, and even if people do not want to be seen, you talked about having those 50 venues across the country usually, and people who may not necessarily want to be seen that they're going to an ALTA class. This is an option. They can sit in the comfort of their homes as well and improve their literacy skills. So we have come to the end of this segment. I want to thank Paula so much for joining us. And thank you for taking the time to join us for this episode of the Caribbean Digital Parenting Show. As a bi-weekly talk show, it is streamed digitally each Wednesday and Sunday right here on this channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. We appreciate that you've tuned in for this episode of the Caribbean Parenting Digital Show, and trust that you are now better equipped as a parent to support your children and, by extension, your family unit based on the information shared. I am Pamela Ramcharan. Until the next time, take care.
My name is Stefan Dabo. ALTA gives me the environment to learn and try harder with the teachers that gives me confidence, so I'm not afraid of making a mistake, which helps me to learn and grow. I am ALTA.
Sign up now for ALTA in your home, on your computer or smartphone.